Welcome to the People's Guild.
Each week we explore the Splinterland universe with guests from all across the mythical land of Praetoria.
Join us on our journey as we discuss the evolution of the game, the strategy, the lore, and the exciting path that lies ahead.
To support the People's Guild, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and also check us out on PeakD, YouTube, and Twitter.
Send your questions, suggestions, and epic battles in our comments through Twitter or email at thepeoplesguildspl@gmail.com. We'll feature the best in our episodes and maybe airdrop you some prizes.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another wonderful guest, one that I am very excited to present to you guys. We've had a number of requests to try and host this guest come about over the course of the last couple of months with, kind of the current climate of things and some of the topics that have kind of reemerged as very controversial throughout our beloved Praetoria. Real quick acknowledgement to Crypto Eater, PNS, and Aqualis. Cool stuff continuing to happen there. I know they just got everything approved for push and shove on the BSC, which I think bodes well for what he's trying to accomplish with that little side hustle project. Continues to get some cool traction on Twitter, and go check them out. Without further ado, we've got iProto. The I is silent. I was very recently informed. So Proto, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you taking time to hop on with us, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I see the icon up in the Zoom chat. You've got the old school Adam West Batman, and I was a huge fan of that show as a kid, even though it was kind of well before my time. And growing up initially, we didn't have cable, but my aunt did, and she would record them off of whatever random channel it was on. And so every couple weeks or whatever, my aunt would there was a time when my aunt would give me VHSs of that old school Adam West Batman show. So, are you a big fan of that? What about that show did you love? Or
honestly, that just came about because there was a meme at the time that was going around of Adam West, and I had to pick a profile picture. I'm like, hey, that meme's funny. So I didn't want my memes to be dreams.
Nice. So have you never seen the show?
No, I've seen it.
Okay. I like that. I like campy stuff like that. I don't know why, but stuff that doesn't take itself too seriously. So
yeah,
I think it's cool.
Nice. I wasn't expecting you to open with that, but I'm so glad that you did that. So is before we dive into stuff, is that your favorite era of Batman?
I don't know. I'm not a huge Batman fan. So I guess maybe I really like that in the original movie too. I mean, yeah, you had, God, it was the Penguin. It was
Danny DeVito, Michael
Meredith
Keaton.
Burgess. It was Rocky's trainer from Rocky 1 was a Penguin. You had Eartha Kitt as a Catwoman. I don't know. It was cool. It was fun. It was, like I said, it just didn't take itself too seriously. I kind of like the whichever Batman was with. Movie they had with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jim Carrey, and people this is the worst one, and I'm like, that's the cool. I think it was a great one because it was back to we're just
that was George Clooney, wasn't it?
Was
or
that
Val Kilmer?
Yeah,
there's been a lot of Batmans.
I like the Batman Returns too with Danny DeVito as the Penguin. That one was really good. That's probably if I had to pick a favorite movie, that would probably be it.
Wow.
So,
all right.
Randomly.
Well,
okay, no one wants to hear about my bad Batman. Let's go back to Proto.
Yeah, Proto.
Yeah,
so go ahead, Hep. Kick us off,
I was going to say, so Archmage is kind of, we're talking a little bit how you guys were kind of sort of the first of this latest generation of bots and automated tools for Splinterlands. So would love to hear sort of the backstory of how you got into Splinterlands and how you decided to develop Archmage.
Yeah, sure. So I guess maybe I'll just do a quick background of me professionally. Been coding for more than 25 years, have a computer science degree, and currently work in software engineering. So I've been over that time involved with game related coding, several different ways. So it started off ages ago with StarCraft modding, did Diablo 2 botting slash botting engine. Um, I did some stuff with World of Warcraft. It's not too much there, but did some add-ons and stuff like that. And actually, I moved over to Hearthstone from World of Warcraft, which then led to Magic, and that's kind of where I got more into like the cards and stuff. So it's just kind of a natural progression that when I started kind of digging into crypto more, I was looking for what's a good crypto project that I think has some potential, and I already like card related stuff. So I was looking at Splinterlands and Gods Unchained, and I can't remember some other stuff. And this was just the one that kind of stuck. So I joined up. Actually, I saw a peak post from Max Power, who I don't actually remember what the post was, but basically just had a thing on there that said, "Oh, join our guild." So joined up with that guild, which then introduced me to the people who became the two founding other members of Archmage. They actually had a bot that they were trying to do, which was based on like kind of the older generation of bots, and they just asked me if I could help with that since I was doing a little bit of developing for in guild utilities. I had something called Splinter Snipe at the time. It was a thing to help you rent CP when that was still a thing. You needed CP to hit leagues, so I would try to find good deals on that. So yeah, they invited me in, and that's how Archmage happened.
Interesting. So you've been. I just looked up your profile here in the background. You joined up Splinterlands June 2021. Interesting time to come on board, and just for some perspective of time, I believe that's before SPS came about, after Untamed sold out, after Land sold out. Is that kind of the climate that you entered the game into?
Yeah, it was definitely after Land. I feel like SPS was out by that point, but I can't actually remember for sure. It wasn't out for very long. Like it was still definitely the airdrop was going on around that time.
Got you. Okay. Well, I think we had, like I mentioned to you off air, we've definitely hosted Max Power a couple of times, and I think he shared kind of his understanding of the genesis of Archmage. We had Melon on. That was a bit more of, kind of speaking to Archmage capabilities at that time. I want to say that was maybe November, December 2022, something along those lines. So I always find it interesting, kind of it was a very natural genesis of the business that is Archmage. Would you mind sharing a little bit more of, what those kind of initial conversations looked like? Was it ever we're going into this project with the intention of building a brand, building a business, or did that just all kind of progress naturally to the place where that felt like the most logical next step?
Yeah, so I guess the third member of our founding group that we haven't talked about his handle is Imposter. And for him, I think it was probably always a plan to turn it into something much larger. I was a bit more, I don't know, skeptical. I'm a bit of a realist, so I wasn't expecting it to take off like it did. So I was more doing it because I thought it was neat. I wasn't specifically trying to make a bunch of money off it or anything. And like when we originally started off, we started offering our alpha tokens, which was 200 tokens that we minted, and like we couldn't even give these things away, like no one wanted them. And then within like a few months, I think they're worth like several $100s each. So that was very surprising to me. Didn't quite realize the demand would be there for that.
Yeah, I remember when that was coming out, and I was just still only playing manually at the time, and so I wasn't that interested. But it was kind of intriguing to see, that the price all of a sudden it was like everybody was talking about it. I guess I didn't really even hear about when it was first released, but then yeah, all of a sudden everybody's talking about the prices, skyrocketing. Yeah, and just more and more people started started talking about botting their accounts. So it's definitely kind of changed the landscape a bit there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it was a bit of a opportunistic time to do it because we were able to join forces with Splex, who was also gaining traction at that time, and they were able to really kind of push us to a larger crowd.
Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of, I remember about the time that I first heard about Archmage was, I don't know if you guys recall, but guys like Yue, Hellslash, Schnapoon, they were called out as being botters and very swiftly escorted out of a number of kind of higher profile, higher rewarding tournaments without much evidence other than pure suspicion because their win rate is so high. And then I think it was swiftly on the heels of that I heard about Archmage, and everybody kind of immediately embraced you guys as the safe, correct way to go about botting. And I think by that point, alpha beta tokens were completely gone. You guys were getting ready to launch your regular token. It's just so interesting that the narrative it goes. It's such a polarizing conversation around bots and account automation, and I always found it interesting that you guys, I think it must have been, one of Max, he did a bunch of, kind of PR, he did the whole tour, and every content creator was hosting Max there for a little while when XBot was finally getting, rubber to the road with your product, and really shifting the connotation around botting from bot to account automation, which I thought, the power of words is not lost on me. It's such a clever shift, but it really speaks to kind of the philosophy that you guys employ with the nature of the business that you guys are operating in. Yeah. So what was it like internally to kind of like to go through, obviously I'm sure you guys had an ear pretty close to the ground with respect to community sentiment around bots, and are these tokens legitimate? Is it fair? That sort of stuff. Was there any sort of conversation around the ethics of what you guys were doing, and was it purely demand that said, hey, we should press on?
Yeah, so I guess I have to take some amount of credit for the ethics side of things. Just I have a very strong sense of justice, I guess you could say. Like when I was playing Magic, I actually became a Magic judge for a little while. And then 2019 actually is when I got certified for that. And the funniest thing happened after that. So I had to stop doing judging. But yeah, no, I have a very strong sense of justice, and I wanted to kind of make sure that we were seen as being the most ethical service. Like that's part of the reason I wanted to do these tokens, is I want to explicitly limit the access so these can't be massively farmed. I wanted everything to be just kind of very above board and obvious with how we're doing stuff. I made it so that the way that we play is we have a schedule where you can set a frequency up to X number of times per hour. Like our max is 4 currently. I think it was 6 at one point. But I don't want it to just sit there constantly spamming games and needlessly costing a lot of money for Splinterlands and being a problem to the community. Like back when we started, that was before energy, right? So you could just play to your heart's content. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the ethics side.
Yeah, that's interesting. How about when the conversations were happening about whether we should ban bots in modern and switch it to modern and wild and have no bots in modern? How did you guys feel about that? Did you think it was gonna kind of really hurt your business, or do you think, well, people just using wild, and kind of what were the discussions there, and how did you guys adapt?
Yeah, so internally we kind of knew that this was going to hurt our bottom line quite a bit, and it has. But we want to play ball as much as we can with Splinterlands. Like we want to do what's best for the game and the community, and If like the game doesn't exist, then we don't exist. So it's kind of in our best interest also to make sure that we're doing what's best for the game and not speeding up a demise of it if this is what the community wants. I think personally, I think they picked the wrong format to remove bots from, but yeah, it is what it is. I think we're kind of in the spot that we're in now, and you can't really put that toothpaste back in the tube, unfortunately.
I think we've heard that analogy a few consecutive episodes in a row now, and that's one that had escaped me for many years. So,
I want to know why. Why did you think? What would have been the advantage to have, no bots in Wild instead of Modern? Kind of, you said you think they picked the wrong one. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, like look at the problems that they're having right now, where new players are coming in and they're being encouraged to play in Modern. It's got like the new cards that are being printed, but they're getting absolutely crushed because there is not enough liquidity. The players that they're going against have all of the cards, and it's just not a very new player friendly experience. But when they go into playing against a wide open field of bots, half of them are not very good. They're able to actually have a better experience, and like new players don't know if they're playing against a human or a bot. There's no chat. They're just playing games, right? So
yeah,
I don't know, just it's weird.
Yeah, I've had conversations with people the last couple of weeks about all these issues with them removing league caps and the liquidity matches in Modern and those difficulties you just mentioned. And a number of people's response has been, I'm playing in Wild now. Like I'm going back and playing in Wild. And I actually recently got a Archmage beta token off a Hive engine, and I've been running that a little bit. I think I have it set so it comes on if I'm at like 35, I think, energy for days when I'm not able to play. I'm still playing a decent amount of Modern, but even only playing a little bit, it's the Archmage has my deck, which is I have a decent amount of wild cards still that I didn't put on land, but it's pushed me up into Champ 3 with like a gold deck, and I think it's just because like you said, there's just so much of that match liquidity that's there in Wild, that there's just a lot of variability in the decks you're seeing, as opposed to in Modern. I can't get out of gold 2 this season, and because it's like every other match is someone with max level cards, and I can win some of those when it's like higher mana cap because I have good cards, and I found that good cards at a gold level and played well will beat max level cards. But I really found that it's those lower mana cap matches where you're just playing those small mana commons and stuff like that I just don't, going up against max level decks with that, it's just I can't really compete. So the Archmage has been working great for me this season. So getting up in the Champ 3, it's crazy. Yeah,
I've heard that feedback a lot too, that there's people telling us that they're hitting Champ with silver decks where it's a Modern silver deck, and they try to play in Modern and they just get no rewards because they're stuck in bronze or maybe low silver.
Especially with the glint and the change the glint. I mean, the glint rewards, if you're someone who cares about glint rewards, the glint rewards are so much higher. You're going to get less SPS probably playing in Wild, but the glint rewards, I think I'm getting 3 times like 600-700 glint per win in Wild, as opposed to the 250 to 300 or so getting in Modern.
Yeah, as it turns out, an extra 50% of a small number is still a small number. So the 50% incentive isn't really actually that much of an incentive if you can't climb to an appropriate rating.
Right.
Do you feel like, Proto, I'd love to get your thoughts on, so I am one of those players who I've got one of the Xbot mini tokens on my alt account. It's a silver, purely silver. I have very recently leveled up some of my soulbound cards to gold level, but even that is very far and few between. So, I'd say 95% of my playing deck is maxed for silver. I've got a handful of, kind of the very traditionally meta wild cards, but mostly it's Chaos Legion Rift Watchers. A few key rebellion cards, but yeah, it's on the cusp of hitting champ 1. Or excuse me, champ 3. It's sitting a little bit more than halfway through Diamond 1. And I'd love to get your perspective. So, you've obviously been a gamer for a really long time. Is this healthy for the game when such a, relatively small financial investment of a deck can creep into damn near the highest echelon of the game?
No, probably not. If I'm being honest, I think like modern and wild are at opposite extremes of the problematic range, I guess, with this league setup that they have right now. And I think that it's hurting everyone in both formats, unfortunately, for opposite reasons.
And have you put some thought to what, if Proto was king of Praetoria, what would a solution or a series of solutions look like according to you?
That's an interesting question, because I obviously have a bias towards wanting something that helps bots, since that's how I kind of get my money in this game for the most part. But yeah, so if we take that out of the picture and I just wanted to overall improve things, honestly, I'd probably take SPS out of ranked entirely. I'd make ranked somewhere for people who want to play the game, and try to move SPS into other formats where people have to have more skin in the game to actually be able to even interact.
Interesting. Like what? So are you thinking more tournaments? Are you thinking just with brawls, or just the land?
So
more?
I mean, like it could be any of that, or some new modes like the stuff that Weirdbeard was talking about, like the limited modes where it doesn't have to be a high buy-in, but you either have to like own some cards, or you need to pay some money to enter an event. It doesn't have to be a full tournament. It could just be a simple thing where you have to play matches until you win or lose 2 of them or something like that, like Arena does, Magic Arena. I'm sure there's other games that have good examples of modes that we could steal, but just something so you have to actually own something, and you have to be risking something to be earning, instead of just existing and you just get paid for it. I think that incentivizes people to like exploit the game with bots and go wide, and it just kind of hurts everyone if you don't have to really put anything into it yourself. There's no cost
So
for it.
how would you handle? So are you saying completely remove rewards from Modern and Wild as we currently see it, or shift them to maybe purely glint, bring back non-soulbound reward cards, and then perhaps there's another format where at the beginning of every season you pay 1,000 SPS to compete at champ sort of thing, and therefore you're earning justified rewards throughout the course of the season. What does that kind of look like for Modern and Wild as it currently stands, and the associated rewards?
Yeah, so I mean, like if you go back to having non-soulbound rewards in a format where you don't have to really own anything, then it's kind of the same problem as paying out SPS, right? Like people can turn that into some sort of like tangible reward. So it's going to cause the same problem. So to get around that, I'd probably want to have the rewards hiding behind, again, some sort of barrier of ownership. What exactly that looks like is up for debate, I guess. But if that's a battle pass or whatever you have to be able to earn the tradable rewards, then so be it. But I don't know. That's just kind of what I think. I'm not necessarily an expert game designer or anything. This is just kind of off the cuff. What I would think would work better. It's a pretty radical change from what we have today, though. So I don't realistically expect they'd want to move towards this, but we're already seeing a lot of resistance with just trying to make the relatively small changes that we've been making lately.
Yeah. But do you not think that the staked SPS requirement and the requirement to, either own or rent cards, like the, kind of like the nerf you get on your rewards for the starter card. Do you see that as not enough of a barrier of ownership to participate?
Um, Not when you can rent it for dirt cheap, I guess. Um, I think if you had to actually own those assets, like a certain amount of it, not be able to just rent them,
Mm.
then that would probably be fine. But the fact that you can rent it for pennies, it kind of invalidates it.
I mean, that's kind of a product of our small player base, though, right? Like, I think
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, volume of players, and therefore the demand that comes with volume of players would obviously raise the prices on rentals of SPS, rentals of cards, and that sort of stuff. But it's an interesting take, man. We had a battle royale session yesterday that got pretty fiery for anybody who's listening and hasn't had a chance to listen to it. Shout out to my boys Bebe and Stever. They we were watching an epic tennis match for about an hour of Stever versus Bebe, and kind of discussing what should the future look like, and what kind of radical changes should we not necessarily fully implement, but start to explore. And I think it's interesting that the word choice that you selected there, Proto, and relatively small changes that we've already made. And I feel like the reward shift, I would agree is relatively small, but the changes to ranked in general from, gosh, I guess 6 weeks ago now, I feel like was radical. That was a huge change, and I don't think Matt has asked for patience, and he said a number of seasons before we kind of see what do things look like once they've shaken out. Do you not feel like that was a radical change, and do you think that we've also been told that we've just kind of seen the beginnings of what the new ranked would look like. So in my mind, I feel like there's still radical change on the board of opportunity. So I don't feel like what you're proposing is outside the realm of possibility. But yeah, all of that being said, do you not feel like the changes to ranked in general was necessarily as massive as somebody like myself is saying that I feel like it was?
Um, yeah, so I think maybe we're talking about two slightly different things. Like I think the change itself was small, but the consequence was large. So I think they're just looking for what is the best bang for the buck they can get with the current system that they have, tweak things here and there to come up with something that they thought was more healthy. So in this case, they kind of just tore out about it, a bunch of things instead of really adding much to it. I guess Glint was the major thing they added, quote unquote, but it's really just kind of a reskin of our shares. So almost everything that we have still existed. It's just kind of a rejumble of how it works. But yeah, big consequences for what it ended up meaning for the average player.
Yeah, and I mean, we heard that this was going to be good for a new player experience. It was going to be, good to help people kind of get out of those leagues that they felt they were stuck in. And I feel like it's almost worse on both those respects. Um, yeah, what's your opinion about that, or what do you think the team needs to do to kind of make that work?
Um, I guess I'll steal a kind of saying from software development, which was popular, I don't know, 5 or so years ago. Is I think they're trying to move fast and break things effectively. So they're just kind of throwing changes at the wall to see what sticks and what's going to make an improvement, because I think it's really difficult in this sort of field to really guess how things are going to shake out. So it's easier to just try them and see if it's a benefit or not. And if it's not, then you switch to something else. They're in a position where I think that they feel like they need to be taking higher risks to figure these questions out. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. If we were in more of a bull market, I guess, for the game, like obviously larger cryptos in a different state than the game is kind of in right now. So if we were in a larger one, then they'd probably be taking a little bit more safe options, but because they've got so much runway and things are kind of pointed down, I think that they're just saying this is an opportunity to just let's see how much stuff we can get out with the resources we have.
That's fair. I hope that assessment is accurate. I would love to see the change and subsequent changes coming. I want to see this as a constantly iterative process, and new tweaks. Let's pull this lever, let's shift this dial, and see if over the course of the coming months we can really kind of fine tune this thing to a place where it caters to the people who are completely content for whatever their reason is, completely content in competing at a high level at silver, gold, and respect that that's where they want to be. So I hope you're right, man. And we've got a town hall in about, I guess, 36 hours, something like that, 24 hours. And I'm very, very hopeful that Matt kind of comes out and embraces the iterative process. Maybe not offering. I don't expect him to offer up potential counter solutions to all of the negative feedback that we've been seeing lately, but embracing that as being a distinct possibility and potential reality over the course of the next couple of months, I think would go a long way for just abating a lot of the poor experience that folks lesser than champ have been feeling in modern.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that the community can withstand all of the changes. I mean, like, sure, as you guys know, the sodium level in the game right now is at an all-time high. So if people are constantly feeling like everything's changing underneath them, then it kind of isn't a good experience, even if we're moving towards a good experience. So I don't know, it's a dangerous game, but I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We kind of have to play it.
Yeah, and to the extent that we had more match liquidity in modern, do you think things kind of would shake out appropriately how the team wants them to, or would it be more what it looks like in Wild, where people with silver decks or playing up at the champion level, right? Like you said before, like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, if you have a silver deck, you probably shouldn't be able to be up at the champion level. But yeah, so if even if we had the higher match liquidity where people could kind of get out of certain leagues and stuff like that, or certain levels, would the game kind of be more broken then, because everybody would be getting too much glint. People, the SPS rewards pool would be draining faster. Yeah, there just seems like there's some drawbacks there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on a few things, like where are these extra matches coming from is kind of one question I have. Like, is this a bunch of spellbook users who are draining the rewards, or is this match liquidity bots which aren't a drain on it and are just offering a rating inflation to try to boost the higher collections upwards and make room for other spellbook accounts to come in the lower spots?
It's interesting you say that, Proto. A little bird has kind of whispered in our ears that there was something coming in the way of something along the lines of what you're just talking about. But before we get there, shout out to our buddy Games on the Block. We were talking about this stuff yesterday, and he was calling out. I shared with him a little bit of my experience in bronze with my silver modern deck trying to escape, and anytime I was at the cusp of hitting silver 3, I would be matched with a number of ranked or excuse me a number of max decks consecutively, which would just bury me back 140 points in a very quick succession of losses. And he did a little bit of in the moment I was just seeing red. I was furious that I was facing max decks, but he obviously objectively was curious as to what's going on, looked in a little bit further, And what he reported on was that he saw these decks were consisting of maybe 20 to 25 max meta cards. And if you look at their match history, they were coming up against accounts at maybe 500 points above them with 25 to 35 max level meta cards. So I'm just wondering if is that what the future of this current system would look like? Is actually and that's not you're not really playing the game when you're just what's the point of having a complete silver deck if all you really need is 20 max level cards to squash the competition, and if you're just content with a couple of SPS per win, then that's probably a pretty decent ROI on through that approach. So I'm just curious, is that how things in your mind would hypothetically shake out? Is as you climb the ranks from silver to champ, it's really about these accounts with 20, 40, 60 max meta cards and being able to kind of sustain that historical rating window, and you're never going to be able to get past them if you take the more traditional approach to the game, where it's I'm going to level up certain sets of cards and to gold level, and I'm not going to start moving to diamond level until I get all of my cards to gold, which is kind of how we've historically been taught to go about deck building, and all of that kind of goes out the window with this current iteration of what we're seeing. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on what could that look like for the players?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what you're having. You're saying you're running into these accounts that have a limited card pool, but they were all max level, versus you had a broader selection, but they were at a lower level.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't even know, to be honest. Like, that's kind of the system that Matt seemed to indicate that he thought was good, right? Was if you're having problems where you can't win, just go and rent a higher level version of the card that you have. I think we're going to see more issues with that if we have a smaller player pool. So if you're running into these people very frequently because there's only like a few people playing in that range, then yeah, it's going to feel really bad if they have very optimized setups. But there's nothing stopping you from looking at what are these accounts that have these very optimized setups, and how can I just play a counter to that? I can rent a few cards that are exactly targeting these at a higher level, and Bob's your uncle, and you're a higher level. You have a new set of problems.
I'm kind of curious too about, though. I've been thinking about this a lot today, probably more than I should have, but it has been rumbling around in my mind, this exact discussion, because what does that mean for card sales and pack sales moving forward? Because I think, ideally you probably want, and this was kind of my view on cards and packs, buying them prior to Rebellion, was that I would basically, buy enough to get me a silver level deck, and then figure out the ones that I wanted to level up to gold and felt like I really needed to level up to gold to be competitive. But if you really only need a few cards, or you want like a few max level cards, if really only 10, 15, 20 cards matter, and the incentive really isn't there to have that full deck, why buy packs? Like, who's going to buy these packs? Who's like, are we going to see what we've kind of seen with Rebellion, where the cards are just too expensive and people don't want to buy them? And they feel like, and for me especially too, I feel like having a silver level of the Rebellion cards isn't going to help me, because I'm just getting beat up on by max level Chaos Legion cards, and no adding a silver level card to my deck isn't going to help. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, where do we go with pack sales? Like, what's the reason to buy packs? If this is the case, I don't know. I'm struggling with that. Really struggling with that today. Are we cutting out? There's a team cutting out revenue by this change because there isn't a reason to have a broad deck as there was before. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say honestly, like I haven't really thought of this problem too much because I don't spend a lot of my time in Modern, so not as familiar with that specific issue. But I'm just trying to figure out if it is even an issue. Because if you're going against accounts that have a few cards that are a high level, then there's nothing stopping you from also having a few cards that are at a high level plus your broader base of ones that are at a lower level. And now you probably just have an advantage over them, which will push you, in theory, above them if there's enough players. And then you're going to run into people that have higher level of other cards that you have lower level, and it kind of keeps on going until you need to get to the top or until your wallet runs out or you're happy with where you're at. Like when I look at Wild, the people that are at the very top of the leaderboard, so like your Vugtus and Orcus, they have almost every single card. And obviously, yeah, I mean, it's bots, so we can use every card a lot more effectively than most humans. But there definitely is an advantage gameplay-wise to owning everything at high level. Is that enough to make people actually buy it? That's maybe a different question. Is there other ways that we can incentivize people to buy things? Probably. I again think limited is a really good option for that. That's how Magic the Gathering sells most of its cards, is through people that are doing limited events who need to buy a pack to enter into an event. It's part of like the cost of entering. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think that those are some good points. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think really the name of the game goes back to exactly what you were saying a few moments ago, Proto. If the team's willing to embrace the iterative process of, pulling levers over the course of the next couple of months and kind of fine tuning this thing and keeping on the table the distinct possibility that maybe we got it all wrong. Let's throw it out and go back to the drawing board. It's no secret that runway is definitely an X factor in all of this decision making and that sort of stuff. And I think that probably bodes well for us who are pining for additional change and pining for a more desirable experience. Because my thought process is no matter how much we polish up the UX and the UI and the onboarding experience, it's not going to matter if ranked is not a fun experience, right? People aren't going to stick around. I mean, yeah, there's definitely the draw to purely the earning potential for a game like Splinterlands, but the fun is why I've stuck around, and I think I would say that's more than likely true for most human players. Anyways, we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully we've got some good insight from the mind of Yaba on the town hall later this week, and we can kind of use that as the baseline for what is potentially coming next. But Proto, so let's get back to the whispers of that little bird from a few minutes ago. You were speaking to additional match liquidity and what that could potentially look like. It's my understanding that you guys have some pretty exciting news over at Team Archmage, and I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of share that with the listeners here.
Yeah, thanks. So the news, I won't delay it, is that we are going to be providing those liquidity bots at Archmage for Modern. So we reached out to Matt after he mentioned that was something that they were looking into doing, and just said, hey, we can do that. Is that something that you would like? And he's like, yeah, no, let's do it. So we're kind of working out a bunch of the details We do have accounts now that have some assets on them. I'm hoping that we'll start to see the first matches being played somewhere in the next week. We'll see how it goes. We've got kind of a plan on our side for how we want to address this. We're going to start with it a bit modest and iterate. We've got some custom development that we've got to do to be able to support it. So our first step is just kind of to get things playing matches and then improve both how they play matches as well as our ability to understand what's the effect of the matches that they are playing. Is it actually doing something good for the format or not? So yeah, that's our news.
That's awesome. And so how many accounts are you looking to roll out initially? Is this something that you're going to kind of scale it up and down depending on to kind of try to find like a good sweet spot for it? Or yeah, what do the numbers look like for now?
Sure. So the numbers for now is there's 100 accounts, and that's broken up between I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was close to 80 bronze, 10 silver, 10 gold accounts. The bronze accounts then again are split up between having roughly like novice cap cards, and then another half of them being bronze cap cards. I guess bronze cap doesn't actually exist anymore, but you know what I mean. So we're doing that. They're also going to be buying energy using vouchers, so that these accounts aren't special accounts that have benefits that other players don't. They're normal accounts. They just don't have a spell book, so they can't earn anything. But we'll be having every account try to play 50 matches, so that is going to add roughly 5,000 matches per day to Modern. Modern's currently hovering somewhere around 15,000 matches per day, so this should add about an extra third onto what it's seeing right now.
Excellent. And so where are the cards that they're using coming from?
I'm actually not sure. They're Splinterlands cards. I don't think that they came off the market. I think they are packs that were open, but I think that you'd have to get confirmation on that from, I don't know, Royal Eagle or Matt or someone who actually was in the process of providing those. We've just asked for the accounts, and they're saying they're here.
Oh, so were the accounts set up by the team, and they kind of delegated the cards or put the cards in the accounts, and they just kind of giving you guys the sort of like the posting keys for them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are all Splinterlands assets. We don't own anything.
Okay. And so you don't, so is the team also going to be providing, the vouchers to buy the energy then?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So in terms of scaling, scaling is really inefficient with vouchers. So because they have the mechanic where it adds an extra 50% for every 25 vouchers, I think it is. That grows out of control very rapidly. So we're going to start with them buying, I guess, 26 per day, because we normally generate 24 energy per day. So we'll top it up with 26. We'll see what that looks like. And if we need more, it's going to be a bit of a balancing act between, do we need to add additional accounts, or do we need to add additional energy? What's more cost effective? How many cards do we have available to fill those accounts in?
Is there a plan to, so you mentioned, and maybe I misunderstood, but novice and bronze is where most of these automated accounts are going to be participating? Is there a plan to grow into the higher ratings?
Yeah, so that's going to be evaluated as we go. Our assumption is that we need to build a really good floor underneath the ratings of the players that are currently in the league to push them up. And then we want to see, once we've done that, is that enough, or do we need more? But right now we just kind of want to make room for people who are wanting to join into that format, who just literally can't even get into Modern, into Bronze. And then if that puts Silver in a terrible place in the 10 silver and gold accounts that we've added aren't enough to solve some of those issues, then we'll increase those as needed. We've kind of looked at some KPIs that we can potentially try to track for, is this having a good effect? So we'll look at those and adjust as necessary.
And what's the thinking as far as, you know, are these bots going to be operating within the same rating parameters as any other account? Are they going to be fixed at 200, 400, 600, etc.? Or what's the thinking around and the system that's going to be put in place for keeping these bots, at particular windows of rating for players to come up across?
Right. So yeah, these bots aren't special. These accounts aren't special. That was something that Matt made very clear, that he wanted this to just be a normal account with no additional benefits. I think part of that is to, again, reduce the amount of development effort that needs to happen. But one of the main things it seemed that Matt was wanting is someone as a third party to be able to take on the burden of doing this. So we're looking to give them a very turnkey solution that uses what's already in place. So that means that we're going to have to be responsible for figuring out how these accounts stay where they're supposed to. That's probably going to mean some combination of changing how our hand finding works to make sure that they're playing appropriate teams for where they're at, potentially limiting the collections that they have access to, can potentially have lower level summoners and higher level summoners, and if it's getting too high, just use a lower level summoner so it lowers all the other cards that are on the account. There's different kind of things that we can do to try to ensure that they're in the range that they should be.
Yeah, you mentioned adjusting the sort of the hand finding. So is that you guys are going to kind of try to dial basically how good the bots are? I mean, are they just going to be running, the same sort of algorithm or the same sort of hand finding that, what someone would get with an Archmage token?
Right. So to start, they're probably going to be running something similar. We do have some kind of levers we can pull right now to adjust it. But right now, we just want to get things spun up, get some of these ones climbing to the rating range that we want them to be at. And then we'll start adding more custom stuff to allow them to stay where we want. And this wasn't part of the official agreement with Splinterlands or anything, but it's something that I want to do, is to try to make these bots be a better experience to play against. I don't want them just to be playing the most optimal thing possible given the cards that it has. I want it to be what is the best player experience that I can offer someone that I'm against. So now that I don't have the incentive that I need to win,
yeah,
it changes kind of what I need to target for my hand finding.
Well, what does that mean in your mind? Like, what are you kind of thinking when you say, a good player experience? Is that just kind of variability, trying out new things? What do you envision, right now that sort of looking like once you're able to kind of get that kind of tweaked, in the next few months, 6 months, a year from now?
I mean, honestly, some of this stuff I'm just going to have to figure out as I go. Like I mentioned, I do have some KPIs that I've kind of developed that I'm hoping will help tell me if I'm making something that is good. Some of it is also going to be just anecdotal evidence that probably I'm going to get Max to collect. He's a guy that loves surveys, so I'm probably going to let him loose on the Splinterlands Discord and get some sentiment surveys up for people to tell us how their experience is going with these things when they're running into them. I'm trying to develop the system so they don't run into each other, because that would be a complete waste of time. But
yeah, what are some of the, you keep mentioning you have some performance indicators you want to look at. Do you mind sharing those with us, or is that kind of something you want to keep, as sort of a trade secret, or do you mind sharing kind of what some of those performance indicators you're going to be looking at?
Sure. Yeah. Some of them that I'm looking at, this isn't an exhaustive list. It's just kind of the top of my head. Like what is, this isn't just for my bots as well. This will be for all players. What is the average queue time that people are seeing. What is the average card level per league that players are playing? How many total matches are now happening at each league versus what they were before? We can kind of monitor the trends on that. What's the average earning per account versus the collection power of the account? What's the average staked SPS that we're seeing per league? There's just different stuff that we can kind of see of, is this getting into something that looks like it's more appropriate given what people own? And then try to adjust to make those numbers look good.
And are you just pulling like all the battle data all day long to kind of get this information?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be nice if there was a better way for us to get this information, but again, in the interest of, we want something that Splinterlands has to do no work and they just get all benefit. We're going to be doing all that ourselves. So that's some of the custom development that's not going to be available day one. Day one is going to be just kind of getting them spun up and then making some adjustments as we need to. Like right now, I don't have a system to buy energy, for example. That's not something that I've had to worry about before. So I'm going to have to do some custom code around that. And then eventually, once I've kind of got the bot itself in a functional spot that's good for modern, then I'll work on some of these other things. But we already do collect a ton of data. I'm pretty sure we collect every match that's played in the game, potentially multiple times. So yeah, we have a very broad view. We just need to develop the tools to dig into it.
Is there any room for kind of leveraging these bots for meta discovery? I mean, I know that Archmage, I believe, offers something similar. I know XBot for a while offered like an experimental type hand. Is that something that's feasible where, on paper maybe this account or excuse me, this lineup could potentially be pull a win on an in this rule set, but is there any way to kind of, I guess, spoon feed the algorithm non-existent data and just, instead of making a helping hand from historical stuff, looking at just the potential theory of this particular lineup and order of cards, and therefore hopefully unlock maybe some new metas that maybe the player base hasn't tapped into yet?
Yeah, I think this is kind of going outside the scope of this particular project with trying to get these bots spun up, but definitely that is a thing that can be done. I don't want to talk too much about the secret sauce of how our stuff works, but that's a good idea.
Well, thanks, Proto.
That means you're definitely not the first person to think of it then.
Oh man.
No comment.
Well, cool, dude. Yeah, again, congratulations, man. I know that it's always good, and I appreciate you guys at Archmage for playing fair ball. I don't think throughout the recent saga of sodium distribution throughout the community has not once have I heard Archmage being a suspect. So I very much appreciate you called out earlier. You have a strong sense of ethics and morals when it comes to all things Archmage, and it feels like for all intents and purposes that has come to full fruition, and you guys have continued to play fair game. So I'm happy that you guys have gotten the opportunity to run this for the team, and yeah, hopefully we see the the desired fruit born from this project, man. I'm excited to see what happens. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to see it as well, and I'm sure I'll be getting an extra pinch of salt from the community when things aren't going well, but hopefully we can make things palatable.
No, I think this is a great step, and it's clearly something that needs to happen, and the fact that we have you guys, we have Archmage in the community, someone who's, you know, tried to uphold the standards and be fair and follow the rules, who is able to kind of step in and help take this over so that the team can, focus development time on other things. And whereas you guys sort of already have the expertise to do this, the fact that you can kind of step in and do it is great. I think probably, this is, probably the biggest, at least from my perspective, I think it's the biggest issue with the game right now. Is that we, with the match liquidity so low in modern, it's made stuff tough for people. So it would be great to be able to see all the things that people have been saying. Oh, we just have to give it time. We just have to give it time. And, this issue with the max decks all over the place will sort itself out. And, it's not going to sort itself out, but hopefully this is a solution that'll help it, push it to get sorted out. So I'm excited. I'm excited by this. And it's great that you guys are able to, get this going so quickly. I thought it was going to maybe take some more time, but do you know, like how long have you, because this hasn't been announced by the team yet. We're kind of talking about it here for the first time. And, when did you start talking about it with the team, or did they kind of have everything start to get things in place with getting the accounts set up and the cards in the right places? Or was this something that, just kind of came together quickly and they were able to get, what they needed to get set up on their end, and you guys were just kind of, ready to get things going on your end this fast?
Yeah, so we started engaging with them, I believe, in the last 2 weeks of March. So I guess that's the week of the 18th, I guess, is when we started talking to them about it. Kind of hammered out some details of what they were looking for, gave them some proposals. I think actually we probably overdid it a little bit. We kind of we wanted to write down like some notes of what we were thinking, and we had ended up giving Matt a 10-page document, which I'm sure he didn't read most of. But yeah, it would have come out sooner actually, but I was on vacation last week and just got
Nice.
back, so that delayed it a little bit. But yeah, no, I'm back and we've kind of worked out a lot of the details with them, and pretty close to hitting the ground running.
Awesome.
Where'd you go on vacation?
Mexico, went to the
Nice.
Mayan Riviera.
Nice, somewhere warm. That's great.
Yep.
One more thing about these bots coming in, Proto. Are they all named in your likeness, or are they
Oh yeah, what are they gonna be
the
named?
very funny like this is not a bot account name, or what? Is there any sort of is there going to be any sort of indication that you've been playing an Archmage led automated account?
Yeah, no, I think they're named all like Ding 123. No, I'm joking. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to work because I haven't actually seen the accounts. I know that Royal Eagle did stock them, so he probably has that answer. But I haven't actually seen them myself, so I'm hoping that there's something that's easy to identify. Given how the novice bots work, I'm going to guess that they're going to name it something intelligible, but I don't know, because they don't need spell books. They can really name it whatever they want because it's just an
Sure.
account.
Well, I hope Eagle. Yeah, I hope he gets back to you. But I want to see Eagle name all the accounts like Royal Eagle 1, Royal Eagle 2. Just 500 new Royal Eagles on the scene.
Yeah. I guess one thing I should mention is I only know of our interaction with Splinterlands. I don't know if there's other services that are also trying to fulfill this service. I kind of hope there is, because I think it's good to have redundancy for these sorts of things. So maybe you'll go against Proto 123 one day and Siler 567 the next. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
cool.
That'd be a question for Town Hall, maybe.
Cool. All right, man. Well, is there anything that we didn't necessarily think of to ask regarding this project, or anything else that you'd kind of like to shed light on before we kind of shift gears here a little bit?
No, I think that's probably covered everything relevant for now. I mean, if you think of something later, let me know.
Okay. And before we do officially shift gears, I'm assuming that, Max and the marketing team will be, kind of hitting the pavement with some peak deep posts and some Archmage Discord announcements and, kind of keeping the community in the loop about what's happening.
Yeah, I'm sure Max is going to be more than thrilled to do that. I'm sure he's got some AI stuff working on it as we speak.
Cool. All right. Well, we were talking a little bit off air about what's to come with the very, very new role that Siler has inherited with the company. I still don't know if we have an official job description, but I'd love to hear, Proto, what do you think this role should entail? What are some kind of metrics of success that you would potentially assign to this particular role? And let's open that one up and see where this takes us.
Sure. I did send a message to Siler, just kind of congratulating him on getting that opportunity. I did just indicate that I wasn't quite sure what the extent of his role was, and the description I got back was he's there to help detect battle helpers and bots in restricted formats, which doesn't really tell me much more than I already knew. So exactly what he's going to be doing on a daily basis, I have no idea, and I hope they give us some more indication. I did ask on the comments of the original Peak D post. I just asked Matt, like, is he going to have code access to the repo to start actually like adding things in? And Matt thought he's not going to have that access. So without him being able to actually write code for Splinterlands, I don't really know what exactly he's going to be able to do, if he's there more as just like a consultant of some sort or what. I think it's a really good question for you to ask if you talk to him in the future.
Well, full disclosure, we do have an episode queued up for the week of the last week of April. We'll be sitting down with Siler, and hopefully by that point in time we can really start to have a much better understanding of what is his role and how is he going about kind of attacking battle helper bot stuff in restricted formats. But in my mind's eye, I'm kind of foreseeing the detection piece. I think we've heard pretty much ad nauseum that it's really difficult to detect and prove without a shadow of a doubt. I was listening to a cool podcast with Coleman Hughes and Joe Rogan from a couple of days ago, and Coleman Hughes is he's an author, podcaster, big chess enthusiast, and he was talking about chess.com and kind of their very advanced bot detection, cheating detection services that they've got in place there. And one of the key things that I think it was the first metric that he mentioned as one that indicates that there is a hand helper going on or play assistance happening is the frequency at which plays are selected. So some moves are going to be very quick and pretty much knee-jerk reaction and therefore require maybe a second of thought, according to the human mind. And then there's going to be other moves where you're sitting at the board for 15, 20 seconds before you make the move, versus the AI dictated play where the average is much closer to that 3 to 5 second window. And if you're consistently making moves regularly throughout the game, obviously as the stakes increase closer to finishing moves sort of thing, the bot is able to very quickly compute and spit out what is the best move in a much faster time frame. Is that and this is one piece of many that chess.com uses to kind of detect cheating. Is that within a reasonable realm of possibility for us to kind of measure a human versus a bot assisted human? Meaning looking at, because I've used Battle Helper in the past. When it was legal, I participated. I wanted to win. I don't like losing. And I had an XBot token, so I took advantage and used the Battle Helper. And there is a very distinct difference in the way that I would construct a lineup when I would use Battle Helper versus when I'm trying to field my team unassisted. You go back to the drawing board a couple of times, you maybe swap elements, you swap back elements, you move cards around. Whereas Battle Helper, you're just kind of sitting idle until you receive the message from the program saying, hey, these are the best plays. So is that within the realm of possibility for us to reasonably use as kind of bot detection? Let's just start with that question, Proto.
Okay, sure. I think first we should probably define the words that we're using a little bit better. I think we're using bot and Battle Helper fairly synonymously here, but those are two separate problems. So can we detect bots? So something that is not using the web interface that humans use. That's how most bots work. Most bots work these days anyway. Can we detect that? Yeah, absolutely. That's not a problem. Battle Helpers, where it doesn't interact with the game at all, and it just gives information to a user, and it's up to them to do with that information as they want. That's a much harder problem to solve. Can we use some of the things that you're talking about? Yeah, we can. I think chess has more opportunities for input, so there's a little bit more opportunity to look at that sort of, I don't know, telemetry and fingerprint a person based off of how their activity works. You could do certain amounts of that. It's potentially somewhat invasive, I guess, if they're tracking exactly how your mouse is moving around and when you're clicking on things. But yes, they could do that. Is it enough to tell a person that you are cheating and you can no longer play in this format? That's, I don't know. Who makes that call that you played weird enough that we think that there's a problem? I don't know if you've seen the video of, I want to say it was Charles for the win or something, picking teams, but he does stuff faster than I've seen most bots be able to pick teams at extremely high efficiency. So is he now going to get flagged because he has an amazing ability to do these things very quickly? I don't know. And even if we can start to do this, what's the enforcement like on it? So we say, okay, your account can't play in this league anymore. Great. Well, they just move all their assets over to another account, start over again, and keep going. So I don't know.
I mean, I feel like there's got to be distinct behaviors that an account kind of proceeds through as they're building out a team when being assisted by a Battle Helper versus trying to build a team completely unassisted. And I appreciate you kind of clarifying the very distinct difference between bot and Battle Helper. I'm speaking more to the Battle Helper side. I think we've heard a number of folks say that we'll always have bots in modern. If we can put the fire out on most of them, I think that's going to be a satisfactory win for just about everybody. But the Battle Helper stuff, I think, is obviously the more difficult issue of the two to tackle, and you having clearly the much greater depth of knowledge around this stuff, saying that as well. It's a little worrying to me. So I wonder if So I'm asking if it's practical to start looking at these particular behaviors, and practical is obviously, uh, I'm taking into consideration the financial implications. I don't think we want to throw the entire world of additional salary at trying to solve this thing, and therefore jeopardize our runway. And it's a little bit of the dominoes start to fall from there. But especially if we don't succeed in tackling and solving the issue. But yeah, can you tell us, Proto, what other behaviors would be reasonable to potentially start tracking if that is the route or the best route to kind of proceed with in identifying a battle helper? And we can talk about the enforcement stuff later if we want to get into that. But first and foremost, I'd kind of like to hear from your perspective. Are there distinct behaviors that set apart what somebody using a battle helper versus purely human would kind of go through in fielding a team?
Yes. I don't really want to get into many specifics about it, because if I say what some of these are, then that's just going to make people work around them. So that I'd be kind of working against what Siler's trying to do by telling people some of these mechanisms. But yeah, there's definitely some kind of computer forensics, I'll call it, techniques that you can use to try to identify suspicious things. And then once you have suspicions of someone, you can use more invasive methods to have a more targeted approach to someone who you are pretty sure is cheating, and then get additional evidence that just would be more than you'd want to do on your entire player base.
That's fair.
I know I'm being super cryptic here, but
no, that's fair. I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it, in your opinion, is it a losing battle, or are we going to be able to attack and solve this thing?
I will see your question and answer a question. Where does it matter? Does this matter for normal ranked play, or does this matter for the top of ranked play, or does this matter for tournaments? Does it matter everywhere? Where are we most concerned about this happening? And at what point are we saying that the battle has been lost?
Okay. Let's say, according to the terms of service, where humans specifically are only humans specifically are allowed to play. So modern brawls tournaments. I won't answer the last part of your question of at what point do we call it a losing battle, but I will provide an answer for the first part.
Right. Okay. So we're just saying every format currently covered by the terms of service. Can we get to the point where we can identify the majority of offending accounts and then do whatever the enforcement part is?
Yes.
Unlikely, if I'm being honest. I think the nice thing with this, though, is that we can increase the complexity of what we're doing to detect it. I mean, right now, I don't know if they're even doing anything to detect it. As we do that, it's going to increase the complexity of the approaches that bad actors are going to have to take. And as they do that, that provides more incentive for those bad actors to just keep that as something for themselves. So it kind of naturally would limit the accounts doing it. Because if they give it to everyone, then unless they're somehow doing it as a service, which is kind of a bad idea, they probably just want to keep it on a smaller number of accounts. So that kind of helps, I guess. But it's an arms race. How much money and effort do we want to put into trying to find this versus how sophisticated are people going to get because they see a high enough reward in them going down this route?
Yeah, I think your question, raises an interesting point, though, with obviously in some places it matters more, right? I think people would agree that, or I think, people where, the the top of the leaderboard in champion, where there's significant amount of money at stake, tournaments where there's more money at stake than just regular play, right? Does it matter more in the top 20 spots in champion than it does in a random bronze or silver match? Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that it does. It should we would one way to kind of make these certain areas safer, is it could we make people submit to these sort of stricter controls, or agree to submit to these stricter controls if they wanted to play in those spaces? Is that's something that could be done, and what's your opinion on whether maybe it should be done or we should be looking at that?
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense to do that in like the upper echelons of reward payout. So whether that's live tournaments, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard to do it, but technically people can do it. They've done that in chess in live tournaments using very interesting techniques. If it's just a digital tournament, but to a kind of higher level, you could have screen sharing. I know that that's common in various esports, that they want to be able to broadcast this, so you have to be doing your screen sharing for that. And that would also make some of these play patterns very obvious if you're watching the person, where what they do in the first 2 minutes of them making a team makes no sense, and then suddenly they just have a perfect team that they pull out of nowhere, and that's going to be really suspicious.
I feel like that's me all the time playing the game. Like, wait, no, this doesn't make any sense. Let me try this. Oh, I won.
But yeah, I think like that.
Pat yourself on the back there, Happy.
the more invasive methods definitely are more reasonable to expect when you have more that's on the line.
At what point do we? I mean, so you use the word invasive, and I don't think that there's any way around. We can't have our cake and eat it too here, right? It feels like one of those situations where, we're Web3. A lot of folks refuse KYC and are happy to stick behind the anonymous avatar and remain forever in anonymity. Are we crossing the line with potentially introducing these invasive tactics to battle helper detection, in your opinion?
I don't know. That's a tricky question. I think it's kind of crossing the line that I expect Splinterlands to actually do, because you guys know, at least Matt's and I think Aggie's kind of view on this sort of stuff is very like the very, I don't know, like libertarian mindset, and I think that this would not sit well with what they think they should be doing. So I think they're going to have resistance kind of from the highest levels to do it. Me personally, I would be okay with some of them, but others not. Like, I'm not sure if you've played games like Valorant or something, where you have to install an application on your computer that basically monitors you. I think that, like, if we go down that road where people have to have like browser extensions and other stuff, like that's way more than I'm interested in doing. But if they just want to track some basic telemetry from me of how I interact with their page, then that's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of standard marketing software, right? Is watching the behavior of visitors to your website, and where are the clicks happening, where are the scrolls happening, how much time is spent looking at XYZ image and associated text, etc. Yeah, interesting. Definitely interesting to think about, and yeah, I'll be curious to hear what does this role kind of really shape up to, because right now it just feels very ambiguous. Just battle helper and bot detection. There's a lot of potential implications there, and a lot of interpretation. So yeah, I'll be interested to hear what what that looks like. As far as the other side of the coin, we talked about it a little bit off air, and I know we sent you the conversation with Games on the Block and his kind of proposed method of countering Battle Helper and bot in a very different fashion than some of the things that we've heard proposed previously. What do you think about taking that approach where you're essentially washing the data, whether it's every couple of days or once a week or once every couple times a season, or introducing new rule sets? Is that ultimately going to be a more effective and safer route to pursue in kind of removing the advantage that battle helpers and bots clearly have over humans?
Yeah, so I kind of have a conflict of interest in answering this question, honestly, but I'll bite and try to give as honest an answer as I can here. I think that technique is a good approach to go down. That being said, there's going to be trade-offs for it. I think the more complicated you make the mechanics of the game, it's going to increase the complexity of people being able to learn the game, which is going to disincentivize people from even getting into it. So you need to find what are the mechanics that work the best for making it difficult on bots, but not on humans, and that's not always an easy thing to do. I think this is already an extremely complex game. Like the basic premise is very simple, but like when I was first joining this game, I remember like looking at the list of all of the rule sets, all of the abilities on all the cards, and just thinking like, who the hell is going to memorize all this? Me, as it turns out, but it I don't know, it's a lot. So the more stuff you keep throwing at people, it's going to get to the point where it's bad at both levels. The new players, it's going to be difficult because it's something where they don't understand it, and the highest levels, you're taking a game and making it less consistent. So I think that's something that, like, chess players, if you suddenly had a thing of, oh, we're going to change the rules of chess every week or month or something, I don't think they'd be happy about that, right? Like, it makes them play worse. It really limits what they can do. I mean, it's interesting if there was a specific mode of the game where that was its hook. Sure, why not? But every single match, you can't actually ever master this because it changes every time. That's a bit more of a tough sell, I think.
But don't you think that kind of fits the narrative that Splinterlands has always been pursuing, in that every match is different? Granted, there's your standout rule sets like, Wild's 14 mana, Poison Match, Llama, Mercenary, Victory. So there's, I think there's going to be exceptions, but I feel like that has always been what Splinterlands has been trying to achieve, where in any given match, any particular card can be the MVP, just based upon the supporting cast that is the rule set or rule sets and mana cap. And I certainly understand what you're saying, and I would say that, throwing a fourth rule set into the mix would just achieve exactly what you're talking about. But I feel like if you take the route of, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but if you take the route of applying, I've used this example a couple times, applying taunt to position 2, I feel like it's a fairly easy concept for us humans to wrap our heads around, where while also achieving the goal of removing or washing the data set that bots and battle helpers would be able to reference historically. Am I oversimplifying that in your mind?
So I think that's the suggestion that was given specifically by Games on the Block, which maybe came from Infidel. I'm not too sure, but I did see that suggestion of just adding like a mechanic to a slot and hoping that that's going to do the trick. I know that it was just an example of the type of thing. Like I think the combinatorics is what he was talking about, just increasing the computational complexity for a computer. It, in my opinion, would not be enough to stop what we're doing. Like I could get around that specific thing fairly simply. It doesn't really invalidate all of the old data. It makes the old data slightly less useful, but it's going to be a bot's going to still be able to find a better team than a human would on average doing that. If that makes sense. Like a bot doesn't need to find the literal best team. It just needs to do better than the human for it to be a problem, right? One other thing that I don't think Games on the Block really talked about was right now battle helpers are like more lookup tables almost. So you give it the match conditions, so like the mana, the active cards, the rule sets, and it gives you, here's your 5 teams that we think are good. However it came up with that, who knows, who cares? And then you pick one of those and put it in. So if we go this other approach where we're trying to increase the complexity, well, we can now just let the humans actually use this as a battle helper, where the human is going to input into the system. Here is some cards I think would be good. That's something that a human is very good at. It's something that you said, like a human can understand that. Like you give something time, I can very easily understand what that would do, and that would probably make these cards better. By having a human do that and help the battle helper, that's going to massively reduce the search space that the battle helper needs to deal with. So if you have good players who have very good intuitions of how to play the game, helping the battle helper reduce its search space, we're back to square one. That's not to say that like all is lost. I just think that specific example would not be enough.
I'm curious to ask about one thing you talked about was how, giving every player more data and just kind of showing, all right, what if we show statistics on cards or hands or, win rates of the splinter in this rule set. That seems like that's something that you guys could probably do pretty easily, right? Where you could, give that information to a player in real time as they're playing. So it puts a player, and then the player could do what they will with that, right? They could try to, follow along with it. They could try to counter it. They could try to come up with something new. But that seems like that's something that you guys could probably pretty easily, do, right? Is to kind of give a player, that information in real time.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I've even thought of doing. I haven't done it because I don't know if that's a battle helper or not. The definition of a battle helper is very nebulous. Is my spreadsheet that has my favorite teams on it a battle helper? Is the thing that tells me all of my opponents' suspected average play patterns, is that a battle helper, or just general usage patterns across the entire game? Is that a battle helper? Like I was having this discussion with Dave McCoy actually when we were trying to, or when he was trying to come up with the original proposal to ban bots in Modern, of trying to define what this is, and kind of the definition that he came up with was one that I gave him from Magic, which is more or less anything that's outside assistance. That's a battle helper. So I think if we're going to go down this route of giving players a bunch of information, that would have to be something that is sanctioned from the game itself, so that everyone has that. It's no longer outside assistance. It's just part of the game.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Yeah, it's not a clear-cut line. What is a battle helper? But yeah, I think that's something that if it was something that everybody had, right? If it was built into the game, then it would, everybody would at least be on the level playing field.
Well, let's kind of take this a a step further, Proto, and against your own best interest of serving Archmage and propelling Archmage to long and prosperous business well into the future. Is there anything that you feel like, I think Games on the Block, he prefaced all of his ideas as not a single one of these independently is going to serve as a silver bullet for all of this stuff. However, one or a combination of these things working in conjunction with one another could significantly reduce the impact and efficacy of something like a battle helper. So was there anything else that kind of popped up in your mind, or something that you've thought about, over the years that would be interesting and potentially work against the efficiency and effectiveness of battle helpers?
Yeah, so you actually kind of gave me that video of the Games on the Block a few days ago, and I have to be honest, I didn't put a lot of time before watching that video into thinking, how can I invalidate my own hobby? But I decided on the plane ride home, I got nothing better to do, so let's just kind of mull it over a little bit. And I think what he was suggesting is still a good idea, like that type of change. He's trying to make it so the information that a bot has is not valuable for whatever reason in a match. So what would that look like if they implemented something that would basically ruin my day? I'm going to have an aside here for a second. So it's related, I promise. In Magic the Gathering, when I was playing it, I had something that I guess people in that area call a level up moment. So you kind of have like an epiphany that increases your gameplay when you suddenly realize something about how the game works. So when you first start playing that, you try to figure out, like, what are these cards in my hand? What do they do? What ones can I play? Like, what are the basic rules of the game? And you're just trying to figure out in any given turn, what is happening on the board in front of me and how can I play a card? Which card can I play? And is that going to do something good or not? But the level up from that is to not be thinking about what's already there necessarily and what's in your hand. It's to start thinking about, what can my opponent do? What's in my opponent's deck? What cards are they likely to have in their hand based on what they've already played? It's starting to think about that side of the equation. And how that's related is, I think it's the same thing with bots, where the hard part, I really don't want to say this because this is, in my mind, some of the secret sauce. But the hard part with bots isn't figuring out what teams are good. It's figuring out, what do I think my opponent is going to be playing and what's good against that. So if we can try to make that question harder for a bot, the bot's going to do worse. So here's an example mechanic that would make that difficult. If we had some sort of trap cards, let's call them, where I play a card that has some condition that's going to trigger and it has an effect, and we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but now I have to account for it, that could be really annoying. So Tactics kind of dabbled in this idea a little bit, but not quite to the extent that I'm thinking. I'm thinking more like, if you had a trap card that was, if my opponent plays a card with opportunity, then give it recharge or something. Like something that would just really mess the battle up. And I can't really account for that, because this is something that my opponent is able to think of more meta level questions of, what am I likely playing against? And what could I do to mess with that? That's again, something that bots really, it's a difficult problem that we have to try to solve. You could have, like, if I'm able to guess a monster on your team and that's correct, then it activates my trap card, and now your monster starts the battle stunned or poisoned or whatever. I don't know. If you play a tactics card, and I guess that you were going to play a tactic card. Now we switch what tactics ability was selected, but it still has the same targets. Well, now my 2 monsters that have +2 melee now have poison instead. That would be a problem. So those sorts of things, I think, would be stuff that I would struggle with, trying to come up with good solutions for. And I think that would like close the gap between what humans can do and what bots can do. Another example that I've thought of, it's kind of a weird idea, but I thought of allowing people to be able to pick battle disadvantages for their opponents. So kind of like in brawls, you know how you can have the home team advantage, you get, I don't know, extra mana, you win ties and speed and whatever other things they may have. If there was something like that where at the start of a match, I can choose to have all of my opponent's cards get -1 speed. My opponent doesn't know that I picked that. They might know all of the different potential things that could be chosen, but they have no idea what their opponent is going to pick. That's something that's going to be really hard to try to figure out. Like I can try to use some very general statistics of what have people picked in the past, but good players are going to be able to use that to their advantage in ways that bots are going to struggle with.
Man, you need to fly more often, Proto. That was a fruitful ride home, dude.
Yeah.
Do you think, so my mind jumps to a couple of things. One being longer term items and spells. We've heard Matt talk at length about the potential power for items and spells being able to really equalize the playing field for assisted versus unassisted players. And number two, tactics. I feel like we've just scratched the surface. I feel like the team could have done a little bit of a more effective kind of round of play testing with this stuff and come up with tactics that really shift, because I don't know what you see with the Archmage data. And by the way, I really loved once upon a time you guys were publishing, I think it's only been a couple of articles that kind of point to the most meta cards and in what leagues do these cards typically perform best and that sort of stuff. I find that sort of stuff super, super interesting. So I'd love to kind of see you guys continue that. But I feel like tactics, the summoners, it's really Avina and a Kane. And outside of that, you don't really see a whole lot of the tactic summoners played. I mean, there's certain rule sets where they might shine, but more often than not, folks are opting for the Chaos Legion summoners. So I'm hopeful that in the short term, there's real opportunity that is there through the legendary summoners, and that's something else I hope we get disclosed in this week's town hall. Is what does the first legendary summoner look like? Is there opportunity to really take tactics to the next level to the effect of what you're saying, or do you feel like that would be a little bit of an overreach and into very OP territory if the legendary summoners were able to kind of shift the dial that much?
Yeah, so I think Games on the Block talked a little bit about tactics and how we didn't think it was very useful because there's not really all that many combinations that you can do once you've picked your team and have your tactics summoner. I think that's correct. That, I mean, once I know what my opponent's team is and I've got my team with tactics, then it's very easy to crunch the numbers on what, if anything, would make me win and just pick that. But what, like the only reason that's easy is because I know my opponent's team at the time I'm picking. In Brawls, that's not the case. I don't know my opponent's team, and it's much harder. Unfortunately, that also invalidates some of the abilities. I can't give -2 spell damage to something where I don't know if it exists. But by taking away that information of what their team is, then yes, that would really help. But they've kind of already made their bed with how tactics works, and I don't think that we're going to get that. Spells, on the other hand, if they make spells work where you don't know what's coming on the other side and you have to choose your spell, then it kind of fills the role that I'm saying. But I suspect that they would probably go the same tactics approach. Like they want to have some defensive and offensive abilities on these things, and it's hard to do that very well if you only have one half of the playing field. It's also interesting that you say that those cards aren't being used too much, and I'm curious why that is, if that's a power level thing or just because bots don't play them much or very well. Like I'll say straight up, like our bot doesn't support tactics. I've implemented something that does it, but I wasn't happy with the solution, so I've been iterating on it. Xbot does do it, but I mean, when I've been paired against them doing it, they'll play like a cane and put lookout on a tank, which does nothing. So I don't know if they're playing it well or not. So I actually don't really have a good sense of, are these cards bad, or are people just not, like, are there not enough humans that are using these things effectively because there's no bots that are doing it, so they just think it's garbage. I don't know.
Well, I feel like the life one, it's, you're always using it just to give something to heal in an advantageous situation, right? So I'll use it almost always in like a back to basics poison match when, give something self-heal, give the big new hippo guy, the rebellion hippo guy self-heal on the back line, right? And just hope that by the time he gets up to the front, whoever's left on their team can't do enough damage to take him out, and they all get killed off, poisoned off, and die. So, and I mean, I feel like there's clear rule sets where it's definitely an advantageous play, but yeah, it's always I'm never waiting to see what my opponent's team is gonna be before I do it. There's been a couple times where I'm like, well, maybe what I wanted to do isn't gonna work, and I'll try something different. But 99% of the time, I'm always doing it with the intention that I'm going to, I know what I'm going to do. I know who's getting what buff going in. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
your team around those abilities, not waiting to see what their team is to.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, is that you could, and so I'm sure you could probably, do you just not see that enough in the data to know like, oh, this will have a higher win percentage and we can do it like this? Or is there other, things you have to take into consideration?
So yeah, I'll let you know. Like the reason that I didn't put it in isn't because I don't have a solution that works. It's because that it's very computationally expensive, the solution that I had. So I'm just kind of working on refining the optimization on it so it's more cost effective for me to run it. I will let you know that when I was doing it, I saw a lot of use of cards like Prophet Rosa. That card, I think, is criminally underused. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I just scrolled through the wild leaderboard, and shout out to Luis. I think he's one of your guildies or extended guildies. He was one of the guys that was specifically requesting that we bring you on. But we have some casual chat throughout the weeks, and he kind of shared with me that I think credit to Archmage, you guys pretty much own the leaderboard, if I'm not mistaken, in Wild. So I just kind of scrolled through, Vugtis, Orcus, Hamatero, Star Shroud, their battle history, looked at their card collections. Most of these guys have access to the summoners from Rebellion, and none of their battle history has a single appearance of any of the summoners from Rebellion, which I just find, and it's kind of crazy. So are they completely removed from the potential equation of a better team, or
yeah, I have
okay.
completely removed. I just act as though they're not in the player's collection.
Got you. Okay.
The only Rebellion summoners we do play is the common ones.
Yeah.
And the only reason we'd really play them is Silent Summoner.
Interesting. Have you guys seen and am I correct in saying that you guys haven't published additional kind of meta card information other than I want to say it was almost 18 months ago probably that I saw that article. Is that something that you guys have continued doing and it's just escaped my notice?
No, that's something that we haven't continued to do. However, Almighty Melon is working on a tool that goes through all of the data that we have and generates a lot of this. He has a version of it working, and then they changed a bunch of stuff in the game, so he had to kind of rewrite a lot of it from scratch again. I don't know exactly where he sits with it, but I think last time I talked to him, it's like some number of weeks away from starting to be tested by some users. So we will have some analytics information that people will be able to get soon. Trademark.
Sweet. Okay, that's cool. As far as the 3 mana summoners, it's interesting that you call out specifically. You know, I think the obvious use case is silent summoners. It's you know, clearly the best bang for the buck, unless you've got, you know, Prince Julian or something like that in your arsenal.
It's a summoner that has an ability in a rule set where they don't have abilities.
Right. Yeah. But I would argue that the, you know, like Prince Julian, the ability is you have multiple splinters to select from, which is very, very valuable. And I you know, we were talking about it yesterday. I've started to see the 3 mana summoners kind of creep into bigger mana matches where it's not silent summoners.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, are you seeing some of or any of that on, you know, from the higher level on your side? And do you feel like that's, you know, like Prophet Rosa, are they being you know, kind of criminally overlooked as you know, very viable options for matches?
Yeah, I think they are underused. I don't know to what extent. I think they get used in modern by manual players a bit better for other rule sets. We do scrape modern data for use in wild, and we're not finding those teams that they're making to be better than the alternative, just with the large pool of options that people have in wild. So I do think that they're underused. I do think the idea that you mentioned earlier of looking for more information than humans are providing would probably find some better uses, but yeah, I don't think they're being used as well as they could, but they're probably not as good as we would want. However, the new summoners that are going to be coming out, the tactics ones that also have dual, I think are going to be very strong and used very extensively. Like, look at the new promo cards that just got spoiled. Those ones are now 2 splinters and can be used with these new summoners effectively in 4 different splinters, due to all the combinations. Or well, depends on which 2 color pairing they use on the legendary ones. If they use the same ones that we already have, then it's 4 splitters they can be used in. If they use the opposite pairings, then they can actually be used in all 5.
Yeah, so they're basically neutral cards, right?
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, is there any way, and I think we talked with Siler about this stuff, and you know, we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. So when we see, you know, looking at the legendary card, for example, the promo Baron Fiat is perhaps how you say that.
Fiat or Fiat?
Fiat.
Not sure how it's said.
Yep. It sounds like a little onomatopoeia of his magic attack. Fiat. So is there a way to kind of, you know, obviously the bots and the automation trails a little bit to what's happening on the human side of play. Are you able to kind of disclose what does that timeline look like? Is it purely based upon the volume of play that this, so suppose the legendary card comes out and, it's certainly looks like it's going to be meta versus the current Grim Bardoon stuff. I don't think the rare card is nearly as valuable on paper. But is there any way to kind of share with us what is the lead time required for the bot to effectively pick up and suggest XYZ card in ABC position sort of thing?
Yeah, so it really depends on the card that's being added. This particular legendary that you're talking about, I'm going to be guessing is going to be seen play on day one. Cards like weapons trainer cards that require synergies and very different styles of team is going to lag behind quite a bit more. Like, I'm not sure if you saw how bots were using those cards for the longest time, but they basically weren't until we had a human only league and we started getting a lot of humans making those. And then bots started being like, oh, these are good teams. So at the current time, it's going to take a little bit for those new, especially like synergy mechanic type cards. However, there are opportunities to speed up that timeline if bot developers choose to invest that time into it.
Cool. Have you had a chance to look at the cards?
I did.
We're talking about. Are you? I think everybody is pretty much in agreement that fiat is going to be the more valuable of the two. Is there something that either of you guys are seeing in the henchling enforcer that perhaps I'm missing when I kind of dismiss it as not as valuable or potentially not as game changing?
See, I don't have the stats, and I mean it's a pretty high damage range card, right? Isn't it? Is it 4 range,
6 mana, 4 range, 4 speed, having true strike, camouflage.
Yeah. I don't know. It's got a lot, right? It's got a lot. All right, here we go. I got it from me. It's got good speed. 4 damage is nice. Camouflage is nice. The true strike is nice. I mean, all these abilities are nice. For a rare card, it's a really good card. If it was something like 4 mana, it would be awesome, right? Like if you could play this in like a little league match, that would be like beta level. Some of those old school beta level alpha beta cards, that range cards that just have like ridiculously high damage for 3 and 4 mana.
Would you pay $2.50 to $3 per BCX for it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a pricey card. Well, what is your take, Proto?
Yeah, I think with the current summoners, no, I'm not very interested in it. All it takes is a summoner that has those splinters, that has Scattershot, for it to suddenly look a lot better. And that's the main reason that Fiat looks so good, is because now you can spread something around which really affects the other team that is hard to remove. I don't like how it currently is with the current summoners, because chances are it's probably only hitting the tank, who is either going to be immune or cleansed and isn't there for damage in the first place. So yeah, I don't like the card right now, but that's something that could change if there was a summoner that made it better, or a spell or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Prophet Rosa, it's 6 mana for 6 damage, which that's your beta level formula right there, Hep.
Yeah.
Or with
force field.
or force field. Yeah, also true. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that Fiat is going to be the better bang for the buck. We'll see what kind of sales are generated. With this promo going live. I don't know if there's a date on when the stuff is happening. Oh, April 16th. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty soon.
Cool. Well, Proto, man, but before we start winding this thing down, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of speak. We've talked about the more public service that Archmage will be offering to the community through the bot stuff, but let's talk about Archmage specifically and the business. So you just alluded to the kind of service product that Melon is working on. Is there anything else kind of happening on the back burner for Team Archmage that you guys are excited to get going in the world of Splinterlands, and what else is happening over there?
Yes, there are things. I don't know which ones I can talk about necessarily, but
Proto, you're welcome to talk about them all, man.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we will let you. Don't worry.
yeah. Well, I know when you were talking to Sailor, one of the questions that you asked him was, what was he working on or considered working on his own game? And I can say that I do have a white paper for a game if I decided to do that. So that's a thing we could potentially be working on. I'm not sure if it'll ever come to fruition though. We do have some other stuff that is outside of our existing services that we think would add value to the community.
Can I ask something or suggest something? And I don't know, we can, to the extent if you do or do not want to answer, or we can cut it out or whatever. But one thing I've always kind of wanted, or I thought would be cool, is if it was something like a battle helper, but like after your battle, right? Like, so like after my battle, if I could go into, have Archmage be like, all right, with your card collection, here's what we think would have been the most optimized hand to play, or here's the top 3 or something like that. Is that something you guys have thought about doing? Is that, easy enough to do?
Or even just like suggesting X card instead of Y card. So like smaller iterations of, you were on the right track, I think would be really, really cool to see.
Yes, those are very good ideas.
That's the second time we've heard that response with that tone. So I'm gonna read between the lines and assume that it's possibly in the works.
Can't confirm.
Can neither confirm nor deny. That's fine. I just wanted to get it out there. That's something I've always wanted. So, and I thought would be great. And I mean, I know some there was a thing before where you could just like kind of put in your rule set and it would tell you like what are the most common cards that were played, but it wasn't specific to like your hand or anything like that. And I remember that was, back when we only had one league, and it was always funny. It was like, oh, you should have played Prince Renarin or whatever. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, thanks. That's helpful information. If I had that card, I think would have been able to figure that out.
You should have spent $2,000, Hep. That's what you should have done.
So,
Idiot.
yeah.
Nice. Cool, man. Well, yeah, not being able to disclose anything that puts a bow on that question pretty quickly. But I'm excited for you guys. I'm very much looking forward to seeing these automated accounts come into the game, and hopefully we see some pretty positive response from the community on the other side of this stuff for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're really excited, and I know that Matt's also pretty excited.
Beautiful.
Yeah, should be. It'll take a lot of heat off them.
Yeah, so Proto, before we get you out of here, you had mentioned potentially Archmage putting together a bit of a token giveaway or something like that. Was there any detail that you wanted to share in that regard?
We have a alpha token and a few of our regular tokens that we're going to be giving out. We'll provide them to you, and I will let you choose how you would like to give those to your community.
Awesome. That's super cool. Thanks, man. Yeah. So say thank you. It's great to have you guys. You guys are, great community members. I switched to using your token because I wanted to support you guys, because I think you guys, do everything the right way. And I really appreciate that. So definitely urge everybody to, if you're thinking about picking up a bot or switching bots, definitely give Archmage a try. Look into it. The results have been great too for me. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. To kind of further that point, Proto, do you know offhand, give you an opportunity to kind of put a feather in your cap, hopefully, of the leaderboard in Wilds is do you know what the number of Archmage tokens are on the leaderboard?
Looking at the top 10 right now, we are 8. At the start of this call, it was 9, I think. So we've been anywhere from 8 to 10 for most of the season.
Beautiful. And last thing, I don't think we clarified. How close are you to kind of, if you're willing to disclose, how close are we to getting tactic abilities kind of optimized from computing expense standpoint on your side before we see that enabled by Archmage?
The plan is to do it before the first airdropped legendary summoner.
Okay, so 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, I did hear back from Royal Eagle. Let's say I almost forgot. His position was he's not sure if they will be disclosing the names of the accounts.
Interesting. Well, it'll be obvious, right? With
I don't know if it will
be distributed.
I guess you could probably piece it together by that, right?
Yeah,
well,
I will say that Matt has said that he wants to be extremely transparent about this, so I'd be surprised if this is information that's going to be withheld. But
yeah, I don't know. He just said that the names aren't anything that would be obvious, and he wasn't sure if they were going to be disclosing the list. So I think he just doesn't know, and he doesn't want to give anything away. So yeah, I asked him and he just gave me a shrug emoji, and I'm like, "Is that a you don't know or you're not going to say?" And he just said, "Well, we're not." He's not sure if they're going to be disclosing it. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, there's not, I guess maybe in novice and bronze you might see some people without rewards, maybe if they don't have staked SPS. I don't know, but yeah,
they won't have spell books. That's going to be the.
Oh,
I don't know how many people are going to play without a spell book.
But how do you you don't know if the account you're going up against has a spell book or not, do you? How would you?
There's no earnings, right?
I think.
Yeah, but if you didn't have any SPS,
I'd have to
staked
check.
SPS, you would be any. I mean, I'm sure you could look into it and see, but just as it comes up on your battle information,
Oh no, you wouldn't know from the game. No.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I mean, if you don't have any staked SPS or you're playing with starter cards or ghost cards or whatever, you wouldn't have any earnings either. I mean, that's not something
I don't know.
do you see in the higher leagues, but
do you get glint without or reward shares previously without having any staked SPS? Do you get anything?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Right? Because wouldn't your multiplier be 0?
I don't know. I would assume so, but
yeah.
All right, Proto. Well, let's get you out of here, man. Really enjoyed this conversation, dude. I just very much appreciate you taking the time to hop on, and hopefully it's the first of many. And Max, if you're listening, we'll get you back on before too long, buddy. It's been too long. But yeah,
if you need anybody to beta test any of these hypothetical, undisclosed, non-confirmed features, feel free to hit us up. We'd be happy to help out.
Sure, that's a really good idea.
I think that's got to be the title of this episode right here. Third time is that's the icing on the cake. But again, Proto, congratulations, man. Hope you're feeling better, brother. Very much appreciate you taking the time, and thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cool. All right, everybody. Well, hope you enjoyed the show. You have been listening to
The People's Guild.